everybody. I hope you're having a fantastic evening. I toast to you and all you do. Hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Evening for here. It's nighttime. I know I normally see you in the morning, but not this morning. Anyways, so today, nighttime seemed like a way more appropriate time to have this conversation because it's not. I wouldn't recommend doing this first thing in the morning. There are some of the things that we have to face and challenge and kind of work through that morning time is not ideal because you don't want to go through the whole day with these thoughts. It's better to do this in the evening and then go to sleep. So today what I want you to think about is sadness. Sadness is something that I think is hard for people to deal with. There's like a number of reasons why it becomes challenging. So for some people it becomes overwhelming and it consumes them, and then they can't seem to get out of that. For other people, it's just hard to get to that point because there are a lot of us who are taught as children like crying is bad. You shouldn't feel sad, really, is what it ends up becoming, because when you're told all the time, no crying is bad, you can't cry. Well, the only reason we cry is either because we're hurt, and okay, you got hurt, you can cry for a minute, we were allowed to cry then, whatever. Or if you're sad, and when you're crying because you're sad, especially as a small child, because sad things happen all the time to you because you're a little kid and life is really hard. And I don't say that facetiously. It really is hard to be a small child. That's another conversation. But so we get taught that, you can't feel sad, you can't feel sad, you can't feel sad. Because you're not allowed to cry. You're not allowed to express those sad feelings. And so when you become an adult, it gets challenging to deal with sadness. And not for everybody. I mean, there are people out there who are very emotionally well-adjusted, and so this will be like, it's easy. The things that make me sad are, and this is how I deal with them. For others, sadness is more challenging to deal with. And so as you start to think about what makes you sad, you're going to maybe have trouble with this. Maybe this is a long journal entry. Maybe this is something that's going to be long overdue. I was just thinking about, what am I going to journal about when I start doing this? And I was like, I had a lot of sadness that happened this year that I haven't really journaled and sat down and wrote out. And so I think that this will be a really good opportunity to deal with that. But then also sadness deeper than that, not just recent sadness or new sadness, but something that always makes you sad. Where does this sadness come from deep within? And then how do you deal with that sadness? Do you cry and let it all out and just have a good cleansing cry? And then you feel better? Do you have to talk about it to somebody? Do you need to journal about it? Do you deal with it at all? And then how do you move forward? I think that when it becomes challenging to deal with sadness, it then becomes challenging to move forward. And either you get stuck in this place of denial and you push it away, or you get stuck in this place of eternal sadness. I mentioned it the other day, but this movie really stuck with me, and it's that new kids movie on Netflix about the moon. I can't remember what it's called, but it's a beautiful movie. It's great. I highly recommend it. But the goddess in that movie gets stuck in this place of sadness. And the whole lesson of the movie is that when you lose something or you go through some sadness, you need to process that grief. You need to deal with that grief. But then you have to move forward, and you have to make way for new love and new happiness and new joy and new experiences. Because that is the circle. Otherwise, you get stuck in this place of eternal sadness. And that's a lonely place. It's a sad place. And that's a place that most people don't want to be. So this can be a challenging thing to reflect on. I know in my own personal experience, I have the tendency to put it off and put it off and put it off and put it off until I'm so consumed with sadness that I have to deal with it. And then I'll have a good cathartic cry and release everything, and then, whew, okay, I'm done with that. And move forward and just let it go and move forward. And sometimes it's a little harder than others. Sometimes it'll take more than one try. And yeah, and there are things that I just keep like, well, I'll just put that over there and maybe deal with that at some point in the future. Those are becoming less and less and less, and this is a great opportunity to think about those things. So there are some things that have happened to you in your life that like forever bring you sadness. The loss of loved ones, the loss of, and that includes pets, and friends and all of that kind of stuff. That kind of loss, it can stay with you for a long time. Then there is some sadness that never goes away. I will probably always have the sadness for losing Ishtar. She was my companion and my spirit guide and my dog, and just a beautiful energy in my life, and I'll always miss her. And so there will always be a piece of sadness there. But it's not a sadness that's like all consuming. It's just that's a sadness, and that's an experience that I will carry with me always. I also carry the joy and the laughter. She was such a funny dog. She would fetch rocks, like we would throw rocks for her, and she would take the rocks. She would get them out of the water. She loved being in the water. And so like we would go to creeks and throw, she would like pick up rocks and be like, hey, throw this rock for me. And we would throw the rock for her, and she would go and she would be barking at the rock underwater, like, and come out just like water everywhere. It was hilarious. She was so funny. So I have happy memories with her too, and she brings a lot of joy. And so it's not just the sadness that's there. And so that's an experience that I'm going to always forever cherish and carry with me, even though there is some sadness. There are other memories that bring sadness that, my grandmother one of my grandmothers passed away, and we didn't spend a lot of time with her. She wasn't one of those grandmas who was like, I love babies. And then just because we didn't spend a lot of time with her when we were babies, it just never kind of happened as we grew older. And she lived in another state and was far away. And then by the time I was at a place where I was like, oh, I would love to spend more time with her, she had already started to get dementia. And so the sadness I hold for that is like a sadness and a guilt that like I didn't spend that time with her. And I learned from that lesson. And whenever I feel that sadness, I said, you know what? I need to call my grandmas who are alive. In fact, when I'm done making this video, I'm going to send out some text messages to the grandmas. Just to say hi and how are you doing, and reach out to say that I'm here and you're here and I love you and all that stuff. And so that's some sadness that I learned from. And so when I think of that, it just makes me think of the lesson so that I can do better with my other grandmothers. And so go through your sadness that you're writing down in your journal, and you're, okay, these things make me sad. Whatever it is on your list. And kind of where that goes. So if this needs to be like a, oh, it's dark outside. Hello. Anyways, maybe it's like a spider web, and you make a little circle of this is something that makes me sad, and then you draw a line and kind of start to connect that out into where that sadness is going and what you're doing with that sadness and how you're processing that sadness and all of that stuff, so that you can grow from that and use that to build and grow into a stronger, happier, better person, and really reflect on that. So before the lights go out again, I guess, it's really funny, I encourage you to get out your journal and write down the things that make you sad and what you're doing about that sadness and how you're processing it and dealing with it and handling it and all of that stuff. Because sadness is just not this like stab to the gut of like, and it's not a sign of weakness, and it's not something that we should not feel. Just like any other emotion that you have, it's something that it offers the opportunity for growth and for better understanding yourself and the world around you. So As you go through these sadnesses, see how they are influencing you and affecting you and making you make your choices throughout the day. Because that's another thing I guess I didn't touch on. Sometimes when we reach a sadness, we're like, oh, this made me really sad. And I suffered this great thing and it makes me so sad. So now I'm never going to put myself in that position again. See, I told you I should finish and then I started again. And so you create the safety mechanism of like, oh, I'm not going to go there ever again and I'm going to stop and I'm never going to do that. And so then you're holding yourself off from these experiences because of this sadness. And are you doing that? And that's one of the things. So write that down. Think about it. Think about the sadness you hold and what you're doing with it and how it's, where you're growing from it. And yeah, I hope everybody has a fantastic evening. I know that this isn't one that's like, hooray, let's do this. But this is really important. This is one of those things that you need to deal with. You need to think about that growth. You need to think about where that's coming from and where it's going and all of those kind of things. So much love to all of you. And I send you a big hug and a warm embrace just in case you need it to get through this one. And know that as you go through this, the grandmother goddess is there for you. And whenever you need her for a hug, she's always there for a warm embrace. So just reach out to her and say, hey, can you be there with me as I go through this? And she'll come sit with you and hold your hand. And maybe be a little more honest than you want her to be, but she'll definitely be there to hold you. So many blessings to all of you. I hope you have a fantastic evening. And yeah, don't forget to like and subscribe and all that great stuff. We'll see you later.